Hello everybody, good morning. Welcome to the United Stand. How are you all feeling the morning after the night before? As Manchester United, admittedly, I think we all have to accept, lurch into crisis. 3 losses from 5. 10 goals conceded in 5. We're shipping 2 goals per game. There's so much to look at. There's so much to dissect. I was on TalkSport last night. There was a phone call from a Man United fan who said, my biggest concern with Ten Hag is I feel it's the beginning of the end because he's going down the same path as Van Gaal, Mourinho and Solskjaer. As a Glazer sympathiser, he's changed the way he speaks. He is spinning a positive all the time and he is very pro Glazer, Arnold, everything else. He is in bed with the Glazers and that can only end one way. I felt it was an interesting but unfair analysis because there's a lot of things I want to talk about on the show this morning. There has been mistakes. I've been misquoted about Anana. I like Anana, but it was a mistake. Mount, I like Mount, but it was a mistake. And the obvious reason we'll get into why we spent the money on the wrong priorities. That's why it was a mistake. I like the players. There's no doubt about that. I also want to talk about Casimiro. What's gone wrong with Casimiro? And why is it that one player who was fundamental to us last year and has been here for 12 months is now the focal point of the media again? And yet the chances, the jokers that have been here for years and weren't good enough yesterday and still aren't good enough, they just sort of get left. How can we solve United's problems when we focus in on a player that's not played well for a few games but was massive for us last year and ignore the shit that survives? This is a fundamental mentality issue at Manchester United and it's why we fail. I also want to talk about the Glazers, of course, and I want to talk about new player bounce. I want to talk about that and what Ten Hag had to say about Højlund. There's plenty to get into on the show and as always, get involved as well because unfortunately, sadly, but factually, Man United are a club in crisis. We are probably, I don't even want to think, but we're probably 9 points behind Manchester City, which means we're 7 off Liverpool, Brighton and probably Spurs. We are in a right state. I still believe that we can get 4th or 5th. I think that will be kept open until the end of the season. I don't see anybody running away with 4th or 5th. But I think the top 3 is gone already at the start of September. But there's one fundamental I want to say here, right now. Sacking Erik Ten Hag or believing it's the beginning of the end of Erik Ten Hag can only be a prediction. It cannot be a statement. It is not the right move for Manchester United. And it baffles me. Although I want to acknowledge it, it baffles me that certain United fans think that. I think in the heat of the battle yesterday, I see that. I'd probably call someone an idiot. I don't apologise for it at the time. It's passion. That's what we are. But now that I've had time to reflect, I won't be calling those people idiots because ultimately it's an opinion. And if those people still have that opinion after the heat of the passion, then I think there needs to be some education on that. Wanting Erik Ten Hag out, for me, is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It's as ridiculous as the people saying we treated Solskjaer badly. It's revisionism. You know, it's tinted glasses. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer remains a legend as a player for Manchester United, but we are trying to correct 3 years of happy-go-lucky management in 12 months. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, with the Glazers and Richard Arnold and John Murtough, has caused untold damage to this football club. His little ring-a-ring-a-roses training patterns, you know, first Conan back, everybody gets on, happy, smiley mentality, created a lazy, mercenary, selfish environment that Ten Hag and Rangnick have called out for the last 12 months. Solskjaer was not a good coach and he was not a good disciplinarian and he basically let the players create player power, which we are still dealing with now. Solskjaer also was responsible for some of the worst signings in our club history that we can't remove now. Solskjaer was not the solution. Solskjaer was the problem that Ten Hag is fighting hard to resolve. And any manager would be fighting hard to resolve. If you want Erik Ten Hag out, I've been thinking about this and I was going to do a Formula 1 analogy, but I'm actually just going to hit you hard. I'm sure many of you have had this tragedy in your life. I certainly have. I've had it happen with people my age, older, you know, mainly older, and I think that's better than people my age or younger. But, you know, I've had people who've been diagnosed with cancer. Some of them have beaten it and some of them haven't. Some of them, it's terminal and they're told it's terminal and there's nothing they can do. Doesn't matter how good they are, doesn't matter how hard they try, they will not defeat it. It is terminal. It's a serious statement on a Sunday morning, but let's calm it and bring it to football. Man United are terminal. You can try whatever cure you've got, but we are terminal. I don't care who your manager is you want to recommend. We are terminal. You can replace Erik ten Hag with Pep. He won't come anywhere near us. Klopp won't come anywhere near us. De Zerbi, he might come, but it's terminal, mate. You cannot cure Manchester United with a manager. And if you've not figured that out yet, I don't know where you've been for the last 10 years. Whether it's Van Gaal, Mourinho, Solskjaer, Ten Hag, even Rangnick. We will chew them up and spit them out because the cancer within this football club, it will destroy it. And as fans, I wake up this morning and I think about all the bad results we've had, the Liverpools more than once. You know, we can go back to the Mourinho days, West Ham, away from home. We can go back to Van Gaal, Leicester away. We can go back to Moyes and some of the disgusting results we've got. It's been going on for 10 years, ladies and gentlemen. We are well accustomed to Sunday mornings like this. Which is why I would say, where have you been for the last 10 years? Because this is not a new feeling this morning. It is a regular occurrence. It is who we are. You ask what the DNA of Manchester United is. You ask an 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old, this is all they know. This is scary. You know, we're becoming the 1966 brigade. I remember when England won the World Cup. With every passing year, we move away from what we think we are. The United way. It's in our DNA. Not for the youth of today, it's not. United are what they've been for 10 years. That's terrifying. We are what we are. So anybody saying, sack the manager, we need another change, where have you been for 10 years? Nothing's going to change with the change of a manager. So all this Ten Hag needs to go. For what? So we can waste another 3 years. So in 3 years' time, it's 14, 15-year-olds who only know failure. The time is now. The time was yesterday. The time was 10 years ago. This is not about changing the manager. And as I said yesterday, if they change the owner, they might change the manager anyway. So talking about the manager is a complete and utter waste of time. And I'm going to talk about Ten Hag. He's making big mistakes, absolutely. But Ten Hag out, leave it to the rivals, leave it to the prats on TV and radio. Man United fan base, we're used to this. We're used to losing. If we are going to lose some more games over the next few weeks, but we end up with new owners, bring it on. I don't want us to move away from what the terminal issue is at Manchester United. What the cancer is within that football club is not Erik ten Hag. It goes way higher than that. And if we're going to waste time over the next few months pushing a manager out, then we're wasting time. We are wasting time. I don't want to see Ten Hag out. I don't want to see that story. I want to see it focused above Ten Hag on the change that needs to happen. And if he keeps losing games and we do get a good new owner, they'll probably sack him anyway. So you'll get double joy, double bounce. But this Ten Hag out movement, I would sit down with anybody. I don't care who you are. You can be part of this community. You can hate this community. You can be an ex-player. You can be in the media. You can be a journalist. I would sit them down and go, right, you want rid of Ten Hag. What's going to happen in 3 years' time? You're going to want rid of the next manager. Because there is no way any manager in the world is changing this. You can't change something. You look at the game yesterday. Martial's on the pitch, been here for years. McTominay's on the pitch, been here for years. You know, there are other players on the bench that have been used as well. We still have players at this football club that have been a problem for 4 managers if you count Rangnick. They've been, a problem for the fan base. Maybe the managers love them, I don't know. How can we progress as a football club when we're still using players that fans don't think have been good enough for the last 4 managers? You look at Scott McTominay, I didn't think he was good enough under Mourinho, I didn't think he was good enough under Ollie, I didn't think he was good enough under Rangnick, and I don't think he's good enough under Ten Hag. That's just one player. It's not just McTominay. You know, Donny van der Beek's still here. Martial's very injury prone. He's been here under 5 managers. He was under Van Gaal. How can you progress as a football club when you're playing players in the first team that weren't good enough for the last 3 managers? And that's not a personal attack on McTominay or Martial. And I'm purposely not using Maguire because he must be overjoyed that he didn't play last night. But he would fall into that category, but you can't blame him for yesterday. We can't move forward when we're using players that have been problems for years in different ways. Is that on the manager? He's tried to sell all these players. They cannot be solved. If Pep Guardiola comes in which he won't, or De Zerbi comes in and says, get rid of Martial, McTominay, Maguire and Donny, he'll still have them because the club will go, we can't sell them. How can you move forward? How can you move forward? How can fans sit there or call up or be in the chat now and go, oh, the manager's got to go, Mark. The manager's got to go. He picks the team. When he's picking players that the club won't get rid of. Do you think Erik ten Hag in May and June was thinking, I really want to be picking Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay, Anthony Martial next season? No, he doesn't. But he is. Because what's the alternative? The club's a mess. The club is a mess, and it starts at the top. Like a snowball starts off small at the top of the hill, it becomes a big problem for those at the bottom. Hi, Mark. As an American, I'm sorry about the Glazers. We have to give Ten Hag more time with the new signings. At the end of the day, Rome was not built in a day. I want to come back on that, Ahmad. There is another side to this coin about Ten Hag, but I just think ultimately the problem resides at the top. People going in on the manager and not the owners is daft. If fans target the manager now, the Glazers win, says Brian. Jason T. I'll tell you a little story. You know this story. The Glazers love it when the fans turn on the manager because it takes the heat off them and then it gives them a bounce. And that bounce is this. It happened with Jose, it happened with Ollie, and it could happen with Ten Hag, and it happened with Van Gaal. Fans are on the Glazers. All summer, they're on the Glazers because there is no games. When the games start and we get bad results because of the bad summer caused by the Glazers, people turn on the manager. The Glazers are not liked, but the Glazers sack the manager, bring a new manager in, and they get the bounce. This can't keep happening. No style, sack Ten Hag, you lot are having a laugh. Only people who should be criticised are the Glazers. The first 20 was great football, but the players who shouldn't be on the field are still there, says Jason. I'm definitely Glazers out, but didn't Kroenkes turn things at Arsenal after years of awful ownership by just appointing and supporting a proper director of football in Edu, says Rast. Rast, I would go and do your homework. Don't ever, ever, ever compare the Arsenal situation to the Glazers. These are people that have destroyed this football club from top to bottom. They're allowing a stadium to rust. We're in huge debt. They're greedy mercenaries who don't care about football. There is no way back for the Glazers. Do not talk that shit. Bjorn says, is Faz okay? I don't know. As far as I know, he is. And every manager since Sir Alex hasn't been back from the Glazers and the board. Getting players managers don't want over players on wages and fees. All on the owners. History repeats itself every time, says not now, Dave. Now, where I would be concerned... Now, I've had my say as to why Ten Hag out is a waste of your time. I've had my say about why Ollie was better than Ten Hag is a complete and utter waste of time. This is just reactionary flip-flop nonsense that some people get the morning after a game or the minutes after a game. And you need to grow up. I don't like telling people that, but you need to grow up. There's an education for you in the last 10 years. Go and read about the last 10 years. Calling for another manager's head is a complete and utter waste of your oxygen, and it damages this football club and the fan base. We are not at that point anymore. Calling for another manager out is ridiculous. Use all that frustration and all that anger to focus on sponsors and the owners. This is not the time to be going after another manager. Even if we lose the next 10, you've got to keep your mind on the ownership, because that's the only thing that's going to change this club, because we are terminal. Absolutely terminal. No manager turns this around in no way, shape or form. What I would say is that there are some criticisms of Ten Hag that shouldn't lead to fans wanting him out, but should be concerning. And I want to go through some of those. He is talking like Solskjaer. I said this in the press conferences in pre-season. He is talking positive shit that fans will not take on board. Last season, he spoke sense, and the fans were like, this guy gets it. He's talking about the problems. He's talking about how far we are away. For example, and you should always have examples, in January, he sat there when asked about the sale of the club and said, if you want to compete at the top level, you need lots and lots of money, because that's what Man City and everyone else has got, and that's what we're competing with. When we put in some bad performances, he said, I don't accept that. That is not good enough. That my standards, the standards of this football club. This season has been worse than any period of time last season, in my opinion. And after every single game, he's spoken about refereeing decisions. He's spoken about playing well. He's spoken about bad luck. He's spoken about the challenge of responding. It's a completely different language from Ten Hag, and I'm disappointed by it. I see it. I'm disappointed by it. I don't know why it's happening. Maybe it's fatigue. Maybe it's indoctrination. Maybe what that means is you get so used to something that they wear you down. I think this happens with new players as well. You look at yesterday, the two best players on the pitch, Højlund, Reguilon. Not surprised. They've been here 5 minutes. This happened with Bruno. It happened with Martial. It happens with a lot of players. It happened with Varane. It happens with Martinez. It will happen, keep happening. New players come into the club. They've got no history of the problems, and they're full of optimism. They've got their own principles, and they stand out. But what happens is, after months of training with this club, that you get dragged down. And this is what will happen. This is what will happen. Reguilon and Højlund stood out yesterday, and long may that continue. But it's this new player thing. They're not experienced in the toxicity of Manchester United. And what happens is, no matter how positive they try, they will get sucked down to the level of the status quo. And I feel that that may be what is happening with Ten Hag, because he is not the same manager of last season. There is a lot of pressure on Ten Hag behind the scenes. Most of it you won't even know about. Most of it you won't even know about the arguments and the stresses he's had to go through this summer. You know, the absolute astonishment that he didn't get Kim Min-jae when he was told he was getting him. That's just on a transfer. But the Mason Greenwood stuff, the Sancho stuff, the Anthony stuff, it's relentless. The team itself is also impacted by something that nobody's actually figured out yet. But the team is nowhere near the level it was last season. It's lost all chemistry, it's lost all motivation, it's lost all camaraderie. There is a resigned defeat in that team, and it feels like the manager knows that, and he's just trying to put a smile on everyone's face. But behind this, it's that whole gif, isn't it, where you've got the guy, there's nothing to see here, with a smile on his face, and behind him there's just a big fire. And I think that's what's going on at United at the moment. And ultimately, what is Ten Hag supposed to do? I mean, if the team's playing crap, if he comes out and says there's big problems at this club, it just gets worse. So I think he's trying to paper the cracks, like lots of managers have done in the past. We get run over by everyone. It's difficult to get up and fight when you sleep on silk sheets, says Charlie Max. And at this rate, I'm expecting a scandal a week, says Ishan. Rashford should learn how to pass the ball. He's becoming too selfish with the ball, and he's putting our forward plays to waste all the time, says Devante. And I back Eric Ten Hag, not perfect, but doing a job with what he's got, says Rob. You know, the contrast of yesterday, Charlie makes a good point as well. There are so many issues absolutely everywhere. But the contrast of yesterday is that Man United are at home, play well for 20 minutes, go 1-0 down. We had about 65% possession. As soon as Brighton scored, don't watch this back, but if you want to watch it back, like Ricky, we were playing well. Brighton scored with their first attack, and then after scoring, Brighton dominated us. Who does that happen to at home? How often does that happen? You score away from home on the break, and then after you score, you dominate the home team. It's completely the wrong way round. I mean, even if Man City are probably the one of teams that can do it, but if Arsenal score at Goodison Park today, there'll probably be 10-15 minutes afterwards where Everton are on top because they're the home team and they've got to respond, and Arsenal will protect what they've got. We literally just down tools at 1-0, and it happens all the time. But yesterday, Liverpool are 1-0 down to Wolves. They're all over them. All over them in the first half. They beat them 3-1. Spurs are at home to Sheffield United. Into stoppage time, 1-0 down. They win 2-1. Aston Villa are 1-0 down at home to Crystal Palace with 2 minutes to go. They win 3-1. Man City down to West Ham, 1-0 away from home. They win 3-1. Everyone in the Premier League can come from behind. Man United can't. We're just missionary, aren't we? We can't do it from behind. We're terrible. And it reflects so badly on whoever is in charge. And of course it reflects badly on Ten Hag. And people will say, you can't blame the Glazers, Mark. You've got to blame Ten Hag. But you can blame the Glazers. And I don't care what a Liverpool, Arsenal, or Jamie O'Hara or anyone else wants to say. I don't care. You're not United fans. You're entitled to your opinion, but your opinion's not worth a piece of paper to wipe my arse on, because you're not a United fan. I can blame the Glazers because we played a team yesterday that is run well from top to bottom, and they played us off the park at Old Trafford. We are run badly, and the team is like a bunch of individuals. If it was the first time, I'd probably look at Ten Hag and say, I'm worried. But it happened under Solskjaer, it happened under Mourinho, it happened under Van Gaal, and it happened under Moyes, and it happened under Rangnick. It happens under every manager. There is a fundamental mentality problem in that football club. And I'll say this to anybody. We get criticised for blaming the Glazers or Richard Arnold or John Murtagh, but it happens to every single manager in season 2 or 3. And that's because the club is run badly. There's no accountability, there's no discipline, there's no vision. There's no structure. There's no infrastructure. It is a ridiculously bad run club, and it destroys everybody. Reguilon will be destroyed. Højlund will be destroyed. Ten Hag will be destroyed. Everybody new that comes in that is good is destroyed in that toxic pond. You know what it's like? It's like buying the best fish you can. Some fish are really expensive, right? You put that fish, that beautiful fish, into a pond which is toxic, and it will slowly die. And that's what we're doing. We buy these positive things and we drop them into the slime and toxic pond of Manchester United, and they gradually suffocate and die. And I think that's what we're seeing. In front of our eyes at the moment, that is what we're seeing. And the terrible thing is, when the going gets tough, it gets rough. When the going gets tough, there's too many people in that club that are so used to this. You know, you mentioned Martial, you mentioned Maguire, you mentioned McTominay, you mentioned Rashford, you mentioned Donny van der Beek. You mentioned Luke Shaw, you mentioned Varane now, you mentioned Wan-Bissaka, Dalot. I'm thinking any player that's been at that club longer than Ten Hag, they're used to this. Their mentality is, it's happening again. They're not able to climb out of that pond because they've been in it for too long. They don't know anything else. These are not the players that are going to climb you out. And the problem is the new players, the Martinez, the Anthony, the Malacia, the Eriksen, are they not already in the same gang as the Lindelofs and the Maguires and the Rashfords? They're used to it now. Like, this is the problem. We bring these new players in to make a change, but they get dragged down to the level of the squad of everybody else, because this is who we are. We're a football club in turmoil. We are a football club in crisis. We are a toxic football club. We have the cancer in a footballing sense, and it's terminal, and it infects anything good that we bring into the club. And that's what's happening. So if you want Ten Hag out, or you think Casimiro's finished, the bottom line is, it ain't news. It ain't new news. It happens with everybody. Everything good we bring into that football club gets the cancer and ends up, terminal with everybody else in a footballing sense. It's toxic. People think you can change the manager and everyone's going to be cured. Harry Potter's not curing that lot. It can't be cured. The only cure is to cut the cancer out, which is the head. You've got to go to the root. Any doctor will tell you that. It's like a weed in your garden. If you chop the leaves of a weed off, it disappears for a little bit, but it will grow back. You've got to take the root out. And the root cause of all this ain't Harry Maguire. It ain't Scott McTominay. It ain't Erik ten Hag. And it ain't Marcus Rashford. And it ain't Casimiro. The root cause of Man United's problem is the Glazers. So don't listen to these people telling you that you're an idiot for saying it's the Glazers. We've been putting up with this for 10 years. Same cycle, same problem. Doesn't happen at Man City. It's not happening at Arsenal. Doesn't happen at Brighton. They're well-run football clubs. Changing managers under this ownership is like changing your haircut when you have a brain tumour, says James. Exactly. Mark, you're spot on this morning. It's hard, but you're speaking so much truth, says Ray. Well, I think the truth needs to be spoken, and I hope that a lot of people, I'm sure there'll be a lot of clips from this taken out of context, but I hope a lot of people do listen to it, and I hope a lot of people do think. I'm not here to preach. You know me, I'll say what I think. I love it when people disagree with me, and, I'm probably going to say something in a minute that people will disagree with. But I wanted the start of this video to be, based on fact. I'm not preaching, I'm just giving you the facts. Going after Ten Hag, as much as he's failing, is a waste of time. Even if he loses the next 10 games, it's a waste of time. He's just infected by those above him. Precious, thank you very much for your super chat there, for joining the members club. Thank you very much for that. The Glazers think this club is potentially worth 10 billion. Ami, you know what? That's a great point as well. We're not worth 6 billion. The Glazers need to take 6 billion now and move on. I'd rather lose the next 5 games if the Glazers go. 100%. I will lose the next 5 games if the Glazers go. 100%. Short-term pain, long-term gain. But I want to talk about Anana, and I want to get it back to the football here. We've had our, I've made my point. You take it on board, you think about it, it's up to you. I've made my point. But I also want to talk about a couple of things from yesterday where I've been taken out of context. Ten Hag said on Højlund he's still got a bit of an issue. Bollocks. That was. I'm going to call. I want to be even-handed here. Ten Hag got a lot wrong yesterday. De Zerbi schooled him. That's not on the Glazers. That's a tactical nightmare. Taking Højlund off, the fans booed about it. Ten Hag said it's because Højlund's got a bit of an injury. Well, it was in the 65th minute, and I think we were 2-0 down. So we're now throwing in the towel at 2-0 down at home against Brighton. You know, there's half an hour to go. 1 goal back and we could have got a draw out of that game. So I don't understand that substitution. And Rasmus has just spent 2 weeks with the Danish side. This little issue, I don't think that was a little issue. I don't think that was... Either he's obsessed with his laptop, and I can't stand these managers who, you know, the little fitness guy goes, he's played 65 minutes, boss, let's take him off. That's what the computer says. Look, our injury record at Man United, get a new computer. I ain't interested in that bloody computer. Shove it in the bloody river. I'm not interested. I'm going to go off feels. And taking Højlund off yesterday was a waste of time. I don't agree with that. I did say about Anana and Mount, and I still stand by this. If there's anything to be concerned about Ten Hag long term, it's the fact that I think he's making... There's been a few things that any manager will do that would concern me. Now, his favouritism of Marcus Rashford, I've spoken about for a long time. I see it. I've seen it for a long time. It paid off last season. It's not paying off at the moment. I really like Rashford. This is not a witch hunt against Marcus Rashford. He doesn't need to be concerned about that anyway. He's got an amazing brand around him, and I don't think he'll care much about criticism anyway. But Rashford yesterday was dreadful. Now, he's exciting. He's a threat. But if he doesn't do anything with the threats, he's dreadful. And a lot of people said to me, oh, I think you're a bit unfair on Rashford. I was like, well, I don't think I was. I hold him up to high standards. He's on 300 and something thousand pounds a week. He really should be up on the levels of a Neymar. You know, he should be performing like that. That wasn't a Neymar-like performance yesterday. It was dreadful. And, you know, I think that his decision-making was greedy. And our attacks broke down a lot because of him. Yeah, I know he hit the post with a deflection, but I've seen Rashford score a goal, as I'm sure you have, and play shit. I'd rather he didn't score a goal and played well. And what I mean is, people hide behind Rashford's stats, but how many games do we see Rashford score a goal or two, but have an overall terrible game? That's moments football. We're never going to play well as a football team if we've got a player that scores 1 or 2 goals, but doesn't have a good game and is selfish. He needs to be less selfish and he'll be a better player. It's not always about the goal. And I think Rashford's become a little bit like Ronaldo in the sense that, you know, he wants to score every game. But he ain't Ronaldo. He's Marcus Rashford. And I think he's got a lot more to his game where he can be a better player without shooting all the time. It's not... I rate Rashford. I know Ricky doesn't. I think Rashford's a really good player. But I think the way he plays is too selfish and he's not getting the best out of his game. And I think that we break down so many attacks because of that. But Ten Hag is obsessed with keeping him on the pitch because he's waiting for that moment all the time. But as I said, that moment might rescue a point, might win you a game. But I think fans are seeing past it now. You can't just be about goals. We need more from him. We need a lot more from Rashford, and he's capable of it. The Casimiro criticism I find ridiculous. You know, he's not playing well. I can see that. He got subbed off yesterday again. I don't know what it is with Casimiro. I'd be very, very concerned, and I'd be looking at the fitness department big time. If Casimiro legs have gone, like some experts, like that bloody Jamie O'Hara was on about it, his legs has gone. He looked like he wanted to come off. Oh, again, look again. I just realised again, it's another foreign player who's given up and wants to come off. Yeah. You're now slagging off one of the best centre defensive midfielders in the world over the last decade who gave up at Old Trafford against Brighton and wanted to get subbed off. You know nothing about Casemiro, Jamie, so why don't you wind your neck in with silly comments like that? Why is it that a foreign player in this country can be called lazy and mercenary and quitters just because they've got a foreign passport? I don't see it ever being mentioned. Oh, a lot of people said Rashford was lazy yesterday. Had he given up? No, he hadn't, and neither had Casemiro. Let's have grown-up conversation here. The grown-up conversation is that Casemiro's legs may have gone. I don't think he's quit. I think if you know anything about Casemiro, he's obsessed with football. He wouldn't quit. But his legs look like they've gone. If his legs have gone, United have fucked up big time. You don't spend £60 million on a player that can give you 1 year. So if his legs are gone, you've got to look at the club there and go, what the hell have you done there? I'm struggling to find what the issue is with Casemiro at the moment. There is no way his character is to quit. Absolutely no way. But there is definitely an issue this season. His legs do look like an issue. He looks slow. I'm hoping it's just a blip. I'm hoping it's just a mentality problem that's infecting a lot of people in that club. Martinez isn't the level he should be either. Bruno's not at the level he should be. Eriksen's not at the level he should be. Rashford's not at the level he should be. There's a lot of players. Luke Shaw before his injury wasn't. Mason Mount wasn't. I mean, Casimiro is not the only player that looks slow and lethargic. So I'm hoping it's a team thing. But look, maybe it's jet lag, says Mario. I don't know. But Casimiro is a concern. But the criticism of Casimiro, as I said, is hilarious because it's a few games at the end of the season and a few after the international break in March that he's played badly. But he's the reason we got what we got last year. Casimiro in front of that defence was the reason we played well last year. You took him out of that team last year, God knows where we'd be. Casimiro was brilliant. The vast majority, 90% of Casimiro's time at this club, he's been brilliant. 90%. 10% of it, not so good. What happens in the media? Casimiro's the problem. We've got to ignore that noise. We've got to acknowledge that Casimiro's not playing the level he should be, but we've got to ignore the bandwagon. You know, Carragher and Souness will be going, I told you, Steady Eddie and Martinez is shit. It's this revisionism that makes me laugh. It's like with United and Ten Hag's shit, Martinez is shit, Casimiro's shit, because we've had a bad 5 games. It's like last season's completely been deleted from history. You can get Carragher going, I told you I was right about Martinez. What about last season? We finished 3rd, we got to 2 cup finals, he was brilliant. So you're right because he's had a bad 5 games. But we're going to ignore 9 months. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Well, it's just, it's a little bit over the top. And I think we need to be aware of that. I've played the game. He's a steady Eddie. I always said that. Yeah, you said it at the start of last season and we finished 3rd and won a trophy because of Casimiro. You can't say he's shit now. And when are you going to talk about, McTominay and Rashford and Maguire? Well, you won't talk about them because they've got the wrong passport, haven't they? So I'm bored of all that. Really bored of all that. But I have to say this. I am concerned about Ten Hag signings. I like Højlund. I'm hopeful about Amrabat. But the Mount and Anana deals worry me. They worry me. And I know they worry you. The Mason Mount deal for £55 million, I don't get. There is still time. The great thing about Mason Mount is he can say, I've missed the last 4 games and we've lost 3 out of 4. So it can only get better with Mount in the team. But I don't understand the Mason Mount signing. When you look at that team and you go, we need a centre-back and another holding midfielder desperately, and we spent £55 million on an attacking midfielder. I don't get that Mason Mount signing. There is still time. There is still time, but I don't get it, and it concerns me. With regards to Anana, Mark, why do all our players look so tired, says Tim. I don't know. I think there is an issue there, Tim. Nick, welcome to the Members Club. With regards to Anana, I'm not going to dwell on this for too long because people keep taking me out of context. I like Anana, but I did say in March, replacing De Gea, I wouldn't do it. And I also said, when we replaced Schmeichel, it took years. It took years. People seemed to think we were going to change from De Gea to Anana and keep the clean sheets and everything was going to be great. It's such a big transformation, it's going to cause issues. And it has. And that's not Anana's fault. I still think he's a good goalkeeper. I've seen people saying you should have saved this shot, that shot. I think it's very subjective to say De Gea would have saved that one. Anana doesn't say it. But what I would say is this ball-playing obsession that some of our fans had, you were wrong. You were wrong, and you didn't want to listen. In the long term, I think you'll be right, but you were wrong. You kept clipping up De Gea, saying he's the problem in this team. If we get a ball-playing goalkeeper, we'll be fine. Well, we're not fine. We're all over the place. The defence is more leaky. We've not got a team that can play out from the back. We've got a goalkeeper that can play out from the back. And the biggest issue we've got at the moment is we give the ball to Anana way more than we gave it to De Gea. We're slowing ourselves down. We didn't used to give it to De Gea, so we'd go forward. We're now giving it to Anana because we know he's good on the ball, and we're starting with the ball further back, and we haven't got a team that can play out from the back. So we're killing ourselves at the moment because we're trying to build a team that can play out from the back. We've got a goalkeeper that can do it, and we keep giving him the ball. We keep going backwards, but then we can't go forwards because we haven't got the players to do it at the moment. We're conceding more goals as well because we're inviting more pressure because we're playing deeper with the ball. It's not working. I like Anana. I think it will work eventually, but there are problems, and I could see it coming a mile off. You can't just change the goalkeeper from one style of goalkeeper to another and expect to do what you did last season and get loads of clean sheets with a well-organised defence. We're not well-organised at the moment. I think Varane's a big problem as well. Missing Varane is huge. He's so good. But, you know, I said it. It is what it is. I'd have kept De Gea for another year. I'd have kept the continuity of that defence for another year, because I think the biggest problem is the midfield, and we haven't solved the midfield. And every game this season, at some point, we've been dominated in the midfield, and we've spent money on a goalkeeper, on an attacking midfielder, and I know we've got Amrabat now, but he's not played in the first 5 games. So I would have just spent that 100 million that we had on Mount and Anana on the midfield, and specifically ball-winning midfielders who are good on the ball. That's where we should have spent the money, in my opinion. I don't think Anana's a flop. I don't think he's the problem, but I think it's a problem that is making us leak goals at the moment because the team are not adjusting to it as quick as we would like them to. And that's just where I am. And look, I like Anana. I think he will come good. De Gea's gone. There's no point lamenting about it. He's gone. We've made the change. We have to embrace the change. But the change has caused problems. It's transformative. And having a ball, you know, I always said this, having a ball-playing goalkeeper is not going to make us score more goals if we don't have ball-playing defenders and midfielders. You know, it's not Anana's fault that the team can't play out from the back. We just spent the money wrong. I would have spent the money on the midfield. We don't create enough chances as a team. And Anana's not going to make us create more chances. You know, it is what it is. Anyway, I've had my say. I'm going to go and watch some football now, which is why I was a little bit early. We will be back. Mark, being a hypocrite again, says Joseph. Joseph, Sunday, I don't know whether you've got a job. Probably not with comments like that. But I'm not a hypocrite. How can I be a hypocrite when I said I wouldn't have got rid of De Gea in the summer? I embraced the change. I understood we needed to do it. I just wouldn't have done it when we did it. But my point is not that. I'm not trying to say I told you so. What I'm saying is the result of changing the goalkeeper is that we've conceded 5 goals at home in 2 games, whereas last season we conceded 9 or 10 in 19. We are conceding more goals. The team is less structured and organised, and that is because we have changed the way we are playing and the players aren't used to it, and it's going to take time. We're not scoring enough goals. And defensively, we are nowhere near as organised as we did last year. In the long term, if it delivers a Premier League title, great. But at the moment, I think it was a mistake to do it this summer. I think there were other priorities. And that's all I'm saying. Thanks everyone for watching. Loads of you get involved. Get your comments in below. I think there's quite a lot to get involved in there. We'll revisit again at 8 o'clock. I am on That's Football this afternoon. We've got... I'm doing Everton versus Arsenal at 4 o'clock. So I'll see you there for that. Thanks everyone for watching. You are all legends. And I'd like to say it's all going to change, but we've been here before. And going after the manager, to me, seems absolutely ridiculous. We've been here before. We've been here for 10 years. Changing the manager will not make any difference. There is a cancer in that football club, and it's not the manager. It's at the top. And until we remove the owners, we will never progress. We will never be big again. We are what we are and what we have been for 10 years. And that is a badly run club that is basically a laughingstock that gets humiliated by teams we should be humiliating. Thanks for watching. Speak to you in a bit.